Now, I feel like most players, you struggle to get your hips open. I actually saw this drill from a fellow golf pro, and I wanted to do my variation of this to really get you the feeling of how the hips should be opening in the golf swing. So what we do is we take a pool noodle, and we're going to put it about 1 foot in front of our lead foot and 1 foot behind our lead foot. It doesn't really matter too much if it's exact, just in this general area is going to be fine. Then I'm going to take an alignment stick and put it through my belt loops so that as I open my hips, I can hit this pool noodle. Now the goal is to make sure that when I open my hips, I tap that pool noodle before I get to contact. So I don't want to have me hitting the ball and then hitting the noodle later. I want to hit the noodle first in the downswing and then go through there. Now that's going to get you the feeling in general, just if you're close or not. But there's 3 things that I found that really make it almost impossible to get those hips open and hit that noodle before contact. If you're doing these wrong, it's going to be very, very tough. So piece number 1 would be your weight going to your toes. So if I tend to let my weight come up on my toes, my hips go toward the golf ball. When my hips go toward the golf ball, obviously I'm getting farther away from this pool noodle, and it's very difficult to have my hips open. That's the same thing as if you're getting a little steep and you tend to stand up or back out of the shot with your chest. That's the same thing as that weight going to your toes, and if I do that, I'm nowhere near this pool noodle now. So the trick with this is once you start your downswing, feel like your weight actually goes towards your heels. Like this is going to back up and get closer to that pool noodle. That also makes it very easy to open. And I can see when I do this, my front toe almost wants to come off the ground slightly. So I'm pushing from my front toe and then it goes back to the heel after that. And I feel like I'm really rotating everything. I'm smacking that noodle when my club is way back here somewhere. That's the first piece. So if you're going toward your toes, man, it's going to be tough to get those hips open. Piece number 2, a lot of times players will set up with their toe very square. So not only are they going toward the toes in the downswing, standing up out of their posture, but then it's very difficult to open up your hips when this is happening. I have a great little test for this. Set with your feet perpendicular to the target, so my toes straight ahead. My left toe will be pointing to my golf ball here. And I want you to lock your knee, your left knee, and I want to see how much I can keep this foot flat on the ground and rotate without either bending that knee or letting my foot roll up off the turf. So you'll notice here, if I cheat, my foot has to kind of roll off the turf and I can get more rotation. I want to keep it dead square and my knee locked. My right knee can go ahead and bend, but I'm going to rotate as much as I can there. You'll feel that getting really tight in your left hip. And most players can get about 45 degrees. To get more than that, you either have to let your knee bend or to roll that foot off the turf. Now what that's doing there is that's a trick to see how much rotation you have in your hip socket. So if my knee stays, or my toe stays forward, my knee stays locked, that's testing how much my upper part of my femur can rotate in the hip socket just with my normal range of motion. Now some players doing this will only be able to turn 15, 20 degrees. If that's the case, I've got a perfect drill for you, or a perfect tweak for you to do. Other players may be like Gumby, I can't do this, but they may be able to turn the hip like that, get this all the way back there. Well, I had to roll my toe and bend my knee to do that. I had to cheat a little bit. So test your own range of motion, and if that's you, if you're the person who can only turn 10 or 15 degrees, all you need to do is go ahead and flare that front foot out about 45 degrees. You see players do this all the time. I see pros set up like this all the time. Now that turns out my upper part of my femur where it goes into my hip, and I've preset my hip socket essentially open or rotated outward. Now I can keep this foot flat on the ground and I can rotate well past 45 degrees and easily knock this little stick over. That's the second piece. So weight on your heels, flare the foot open, that way it really helps you to rotate. The last piece is my chest. Again, if I stand up out of my posture, if my shirt buttons get farther away from the golf ball, if I start backing out of the shot, it's going to be very difficult to open my hips. I'm going to tend to come down steep, cast the club in the downswing, back out of it, no hip rotation at all. So as you do these, I'm coming back to my heels, my left foot is preset open, and I'm keeping my shirt buttons feeling like they're down to the ground. The only reason I wouldn't chunk if I'm doing this or hit down in the ground is because my hands are leaning forward. They're in front of the golf club, and I could get way close to the ground and still not hit the turf because my hands are leading in front. That's the same thing that the pros are doing to create lag, to release that golf club out in front when they're swinging. So it ties in perfectly with what you want to be doing. Now once I've done this, say 15, 20 times, I start to get the feel of when I'm doing it right, when I'm doing it wrong, when I can easily hit this pull noodle. Then I can simply just take this out of my belt, remove the pull noodle, and try to recreate that same feeling. And you'll see here my hips get plenty open as I make this swing. Let's go ahead and give it a whirl. All right, hit that one pretty solid. I think my tee flying around the warehouse here, it may have gone farther than the golf ball. We can see there, now that I got open, I was easily able to clear out of the way through that shot. 302 total distance, nice and solid shot. Now, there's one thing that I will warn players about when they're doing this. You see, getting that hips open allows you to stay in your posture, allows you to get lag, allows you to release the club out in front just like we want. But most players tend to come down a little steep like we talked about earlier. So they tend to get this club a little bit too steep and outside. And when they continue to open up, the club starts to come over the top. It's very common to get a bit too much of a fade if you're not used to opening up your hips and you're used to coming down steep and keeping the hips closed. So what we need to do to fix this is the next step. That means that we need to shallow out this club so that it gets from the inside. And now you can imagine if my club's away from the inside, I can turn as much as I want and the club is still coming from the inside. If I get the club steeping over the top and I turn as much as I want, now it's coming over the top. So I got to get this club shallowed out and from the inside. That way I can turn left as hard as I want to and still get that inside out swing path. Now I have a preview video that is perfect for this. We're going to talk about the root cause, the leading cause here that makes all these problems happen. Now I'll play a preview of that video here in just 1 second. Once you eliminate this root cause, this thing has probably been with you since the first day you played golf, then you're going to be able to get that club shallow and it's going to pair perfectly with what we talked about here today. So I'll play a preview of that video here in just 1 second. All you need to do is just go ahead and click the card that pops up on the screen, or if you don't see one of those cards, don't worry about that. Just go down to the description below, click the link there, and you'll get instant access. I can't wait to share it with you. Let's go ahead and get started right now. So here's the bottom line. If you've been taught to roll the club in the early downswing, that causes the shaft to get steep, and that steep club causes all your problems. It causes you to hit it way behind the big hitters and way inconsistent with your quality of strike. So you're in the tall grass and the trees and the hazards all day long. Now the great news is this. There's really only 2 pieces that you need to know to fix all these problems. The first one is we need to learn the proper way to square up the club face. Instead of rolling the forearms and getting steep, there's another way that the pros do this. Once you learn this right way to square up the club face, then you can shallow out from the inside and everything starts to fit together. Now I'm going to teach you this right now in what I call the anti-roll method. You may also hear this called the motorcycle move or the tour twist, but let's walk through exactly how to do that. Now what I want you to do is go ahead and go kind of in the last parallel in the downswing. So here I want my hips to go ahead and be opening up. I want my club to be parallel with the ground, and I want my hands to be in front of my right thigh. Now when I take my grip, you're going to notice that when I do this, the club face is basically straight up and down. So if I'm looking at it from this angle, you'll see the face is straight up and down, and my logo of my glove is pointed out in front of me. Now from there,